All right, it is now 3 minutes after 7 o'clock. We're here for a regularly scheduled meeting of the Beloit City Council at 100 State Street. It is Monday, October 5th, 2015. Roll call.
All 7 members are present.
All right, item 2 is Pledge of Allegiance. Will you please stand? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Special orders of day and announcements. Item 3A.
We have a proclamation declaring October 11, 2015 as Daughters of the American Revolution Day.
Madam Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Official proclamation of the City of Beloit. Whereas Sunday, October 11, 2015, marks the 125th anniversary of the founding of the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution, and whereas over 930,000 members have been admitted since its founding with the mission of promoting historic preservation, education, and patriotism, and whereas the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution is one of the world's largest and most active women's service organizations, and whereas the Beloit chapter of the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution was organized in Beloit, Wisconsin on September 4th, 1896, and whereas members of the local chapter promote good citizenship, provide scholarships, and perform community service in an effort to improve the lives of those in the greater Beloit area. Now, therefore, I, Charles Haynes, Beloit City Council President, do hereby proclaim Sunday, October 11th, 2015, as Daughters of the American Revolution Day in the City of Beloit, and urge our citizens to recognize the contributions made by members of this vital organization. Presented this 5th day of October, 2015, Charles M. Haynes, President of the Beloit City Council.
I think Whitney's going to take a picture.
Okay, sure.
All right.
Item 3B.
Is a proclamation declaring October 4th through 10th, 2015 as National Fire Prevention Week.
An official proclamation of the City of Beloit. Whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and home are the locations where people are at greatest risk from fire. And whereas structure fires killed 3,275 people in the United States in 2014, according to the National Fire Protection Association, and fire departments in the United States responded to 494,000 structure fires. And whereas working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires in half. And whereas 3 out of 5 home fire deaths resulted from fires in properties without working smoke alarms. And whereas in 1/5 of all homes with smoke alarms, none were working when smoke alarms should have operated but did not do so, it was usually because batteries were missing, disconnected, or dead. And whereas residents should install smoke alarms in every sleeping room, outside each separate sleeping area, and on every level of the home, and should install smoke alarms and alert devices that meet the needs of people who are deaf or hard of hearing. And whereas residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire. And whereas our first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education, and the 2015 Fire Prevention Week theme, Hear the Beep Where You Sleep, I love that, every bedroom needs a working smoke alarm, effectively serves to remind us that we need working smoke alarms to give us the time to get out safely. Now therefore, the City Council President of the City of Beloit does hereby proclaim October 4th through 10th, 2015 as Fire Prevention Week throughout the city, urges all the people of City of Beloit to test their smoke alarms at least every month by pushing the test button, and supports the many public safety activities and efforts of fire and emergency services. Presented this 5th day of October, 2015, Charles M. Haynes, President of the Beloit City Council. I believe Chief Liggett is here to receive this. Oh.
Council President, City Council, City Manager, my fellow citizens, thank you very much for this proclamation. We are in the schools this week for National Fire Prevention Week, talking with children and bringing to them all of the information that is age appropriate for them. We start out with burn prevention programs with the little kids. And then we look at hazard in the homes with the middle grades. And then we go to disaster planning for the older grade school kids. And then in the 7th and 8th grade, we're working on CPR and saving lives by teaching those life-saving skills. So we've got a very wide range of programs planned for the kids through the week. Our engines will be at the schools during the lunchtime to interact with the kids, pass on knowledge on fire prevention and injury prevention, and then also have a moment to talk about maybe a career in the fire service and spark some interest in some of our Beloit kids. One of the things that I want to bring up this evening is that we have a program that we do every year during Fire Prevention Week. It's the annual Survive Alive House Pizza Hut event. We serve pizza. The firefighters serve pizza. At Pizza Hut, the wait staff donate all of their tips, and then 10% of the proceeds from the sale of food at the restaurant goes towards the State Line Survive Alive House and supporting that. Now, the State Line Survive Alive House is a house that's been in place for 22 years. It was built by volunteers, raised money through the Ronald McDonald House to help fund that, and also local donations, selling calendars and raffles and pancake feeds to raise all the money that they needed to build that home. It includes a classroom, a 2-story home, which we practice exit drills, where the kids all practice going out of the house at least twice and calling 911 at least twice. It's good practice for all of our 4th graders, and it's something we do throughout the school district. And then all 14 departments in the city of Beloit, in Rock County, support that program. So please come out and join us for that fundraiser. Our mascots will be out there, fire trucks will be out, the fire pole will be there for kids to slide, and then of course you can get a belly full of pizza and have a fun family evening this Thursday from 4 to 8. Also, just real quick fire prevention ideas. Make sure that you know 2 ways out of your home, out of every room in your home. Make sure that you're testing your smoke detectors. Make sure your exit pathways are clear, that there's nothing in the way that could block you from getting out of the house. And, with the help of another family member, you might want to blindfold yourself and crawl out where you can't see. Feel around. Make sure that you know what things feel like, because when there's smoke all the way to the floor and you can't see, it's that little bit of extra training and that extra time that you take to practice crawling out of your house without seeing that will save your life. You won't get lost. That's the most important thing. Don't get lost. And if you have that smoke detector in place, get that early warning sign, get out of the house as quickly as possible, get to your meeting place, count noses, make sure everybody's there. If they're not there, make sure you know where they might be. All right? I encourage you to do the same thing when you travel. If you're in a hotel, count the number of doors to the fire exit, because if there's smoke all the way to the floor in your hotel, you may not know where the fire exit is. So if you count, if I go left, it's 5 doors. If I go right, it's 10 doors. You know which exit is closer to your particular door. Practice fire prevention and fire safety no matter where you're at. Your life depends upon it. If anyone has any questions or needs a tour, please feel free to call me or email me, and we'll give you the nickel tour of the Beloit Fire Department. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
No, not that I'm aware of. Okay. Item 4 will be public hearings. We have none, so we'll move on to citizens' participation. That is item 5. We've reached the point on the agenda for members of the public to speak to the council about issues that are coming before us or may come before us in the future. The council will not act on any requests this evening unless the item you are speaking about is already on our agenda, but we may act on requests at a future meeting or refer the speaker to staff for assistance. Your comments should be held to 3 minutes or less, and you are required to avoid making personal attacks. I do have several sheets of individuals that wish to speak with us. Please be advised, given the number of people, that we do really need to hold your comments to 3 minutes. First person on my list is James M. Ivey. Will you please approach the podium and state your name and address?
My name is James M. Ivey. My address is 1905 Mound Avenue, Beloit, Wisconsin. I stand to address the council this evening on behalf of the Beloit residents who have shared with me their great and grave concern regarding the suspension of the chief and deputy chief of the City of Beloit Police Department. The concerns that have been expressed are that it has been very near 4 months since Chief Norm Jacobs and Deputy Chief Tom Duncan have been placed on suspension for their duties as administrative overseers of the police department. In June of this year, Chief Jacobs and Deputy Chief Duncan were both placed on administrative leave. It was reported in the newspapers at that time that their being suspended was the result of our new city manager's review of the department. After that review and their subsequent suspensions from duty, an investigation firm was hired to administer an internal investigation of the department. The hiring of this outside firm is reported to cost the City of Beloit $6,000 a month to administer the internal investigation. So if this investigation continues past the middle of October, the price tag of this investigation will amount to costing this city $24,000. Our concern is that this investigation has been ongoing since June, and for nearly 4 months there has been no mention of any findings as to whether the suspension of both the chief and deputy chief were warranted. Tonight I've come here with a great number of Beloit citizens to inspect what we expect. We're here together to inspect what we expect from our elected and appointed city officials. And what we expect is that this process will not remain suspect. It is our expectation that the council will ensure fair and just due process as it pertains to summarily suspending both the chief and the deputy chief. It is suspect to many citizens of the city that the deputy chief would be placed on leave at the same time as the chief is placed on leave. Yet with no report of any kind on the cause for such action, the community can only presume that either there were severe wrongful acts committed by both the chief and the deputy chief, or that they were both so derelict in their performance of their duties that it necessitated both of them being suspended at the same time, or the suspension of Chief Jacobs and Deputy Chief Duncan would for some reason prevent Deputy Chief Duncan to have opportunity to lead and have top administrative oversight of the department while the investigation continues. We all generally understand that certain aspects of the investigation cannot be made public while the investigation is ongoing. But again, this has been almost 4 months, and there has been nothing said about the process or where the investigation now stands, or whether it is a respectful and needful investigation. It is the absence, in my opinion, of information which builds concern among the community and fosters skepticism toward the city manager and the city council in this matter. So we're here tonight to inspect what we expect. And what we expect is to be made aware as much as legally possible of any findings that would substantiate such a public, punitive, and prolonged disciplinary process. We also expect that the decision to suspend the chief and the deputy chief simultaneously is not the result of a clandestine effort to block the career advancement of any individual within the department based on racial or personal biases of any of our elected officials, or the biases of any person or group of people who may have influence with members of the council and other elected or appointed city officials. Because there has been no statements made or actions taken to demonstrate the decision to discipline the chief and deputy chief were warranted, it has been left to public perception that both the purpose and the process of investigation is not in keeping with due process and therefore suspect. It is very important that the council take serious consideration of the concerns of the constituency by which it has been elected to serve. And our concern is that this investigation and the disciplinary actions against the chief and the deputy chief should be substantiated by a fair, respectable, and just due process. And if there are no charges or findings at this time that could support the decision to have them suspended, we expect that they would be reinstated to their duties and be given the opportunity and support to do their jobs and advance in their careers within the department. Thank you.
Mr. Ralph Berkeley.
Good evening. I am Ralph Berkeley, and I reside at 1210 Partridge Avenue, Beloit. I come before you this evening as a concerned citizen. There is something fundamentally wrong with a governmental system that summarily removes from duty a chief of police with 37 years of experience and a deputy chief of police with 27 years of experience, based solely on a consultant's preliminary findings and without an internal investigation. The decision to place them on administrative leave was executed by a newly hired city manager, who some in the community believe did not have the authority to make such a decision. The public has been kept routinely in the dark as to why such an action was taken. The results of the consultant's report have also been kept from public scrutiny. Even after the report was presented to the City Council, no formal charges were brought. Only after the officers were placed on administrative leave did the city manager request an internal investigation. I am troubled by the costs that the city has incurred surrounding this issue. The Hillard Heinz report cost the city $130,000, and the internal investigation costs have not been revealed. Seraphin and Associates, a Chicago-based communications company, is paid $6,000 a month. The interim police chief is being paid $11,000 a month. I ask, is this demonstrating fiscal responsibility? I am sure that the taxpayers of Beloit will hold the city manager and members of the city council accountable for your fiscal irresponsibility and a rush to judgment regarding Chief Jacobs and Deputy Chief Duncan being placed on administrative leave. Again, not a decision based on investigation, but a decision based on consultants' preliminary findings. In closing, I would like to say that some members of the City Council and the PFC may want to recuse themselves from participating in future discussions and decisions if they had prior conversations with Chief Jacobs and Deputy Chief Duncan concerning their continued employment with the police department, when to date no formal charges have been brought forward. Thank you.
Mr. Dennis Baskins.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Dennis Baskin. I live at 1768 Gateway Boulevard, 614. I'm here as the Vice President of the Beloit NAACP. Our President, Mrs. Dorothy Harrell, is out of town. I'm speaking on her behalf. We would like to go on the record to let the Council know that we are watching the process as it relates to placing the Chief of Police, Norm Jacobs, and the Deputy Chief of Police, Tom Duncan, on leave. The Chief and the Deputy Chief are faithful members of the NAACP. We want to go on the record to let you know that we are in consultation with the Wisconsin NAACP conferences and our national office. We're very troubled by what's taken place with this investigation. We want to let you all know that we're going to hold each and every one of you accountable. We're aware of side discussions, leaks in the city attorney's office, and various other troubling matters. We trust the Chief of Police. We trust the Deputy Chief. When you remove someone, take their gun, their badge, walk them out of a building, and you don't release that information, is very troubling. I hope when the city manager releases her findings, that the findings are equal to the mistreatment of these two individuals. We understand, we know for a fact that a lot of politics is involved here, and this is ugly, and this is nasty. This won't be a cakewalk. The community is watching. The NWC is prepared, and we're going to stand behind those two fine gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Beldor.
Bill Dorr, 836 Church Street, Beloit. Well, I'm not here to talk about that, but talking about, and maybe in some cases, the premature things of what the newspaper prints as far as the parks and getting rid of the golf course and those things on the chopping blocks. I just wanted to say back in June, we talked about having committees to talk about these things and the certain things that are going on in the community and how we can work together to find solutions to these things, be it the golf course, be it the swimming pool, and be it the ice arena. At this date right now, these things are all, similar to what we have out at the Snapper Park, where they're 5 months out of the year or whatever that they are running, but they have certain things that they need being done. In this case, it was a batting cage, and we put it was a $200,000 building, and there was no way that the Parks Department should be involved in doing something like that. So we have volunteers that have showed up since February, and it's getting done, about 5 hours. If they wouldn't bring the beer out as early, we would probably get a little farther down the road. But we're getting a lot done there. We're just about finishing it up. But it's that cooperation with the Snappers and the Parks Department, what maybe we can do with I know people that are golfing out at the men's club out at Glen Aaron's, and we can ask them, what do they need in the Beloit golf course, or in a committee, and to talk about what, and how we go forward with some of these things. I know the budgets are tight and the things that you're going through, and so I'm back again to say, we used to have conversations and we talk about these things and how we can work together, and be glad to put committees together to discuss how we can bridge that gap in the budgets, or whatever has to happen, whatever kind of community involvement we can get, volunteers in any way. Back to the kids, that's what those three things are, and as a kid, and I'm from Beloit, and David, as a matter of fact, you were at one time in charge of the pool, probably when I was there. I don't think it was the year that we decided every day we were going to get kicked out, but they were pretty good about, playing with us and letting us get away with things. And that picture that you're seeing there used to be events, and we had a clown show, and there was synchronized swimming, which my sisters were involved in, and there was different things, and it did bring that type of crowd out. And now when I look at that, and you say, well, Phil, you're not going to get that many people coming to the swimming pool again. But when I look at that picture, I see Harry's Place. Look at the people that are showing up for that. People are looking for things to do, and that is an amphitheater. There's maybe other uses for that swimming pool that we could really work together, but it goes back to having committees. It's going back to talking, having conversations that we used to have in Beloit that it's been way too long, in my opinion, to have those conversations. And back to the kids, that the golf course was another place. I have a friend that he had passed away, but he would take me out to $100 golf courses. We'd go all over, and I'm like, I play like $20 golf. I don't pay $100. But these people are spending a lot of money to go to golf courses. So what do they need? What do we, that's what I'm hoping we can work on. And I know it's premature to say the newspaper, whatever information, however they got it, but at least you guys are going to be discussing this without maybe having all the information. Why aren't people using our golf course? Why can't we make this thing profitable? Or at least get it profitable, or at least near even, where you then could find someone to take over management of it. But who would take over management at this time? So that's what I'm saying. Let's just talk about it and go from there. So, but that picture is probably, I don't know for sure, 60. I think when I was 12, so that would be, I had my mother's swimming suit on for the clown show. And so that would have been maybe 67 to 69, somewhere in there. I was born in 57, so 12 years old. So. But anyways, just bringing that up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, then. I have no further sheets indicating anyone who wishes to speak. I'll make one final call for persons to come forward and speak under citizens' participation. If someone wishes to speak under citizens' participation, come forward and say their name and address.
Hi, my name is Jim Cronin, 1719 Emerson Street, Beloit. I'm also here to talk about the article that was written in the Beloit Daily News. I believe maybe it was this weekend, Friday. I can't speak on behalf of the golf course, or I can't speak on behalf of the pool, although my kids do use those facilities. I can speak on behalf of a facility that I have spent a lot of time at, which would be the hockey rink. I think 4 years ago, I probably stood up here and we probably had the same conversation. When I read that article in the paper, I think we need to look into those numbers a little closer. What it failed to exclude was the revenue. I know that Beloit Hockey would pay to the city to the tune of $70,000 to $75,000 a year of income. As far as maintenance at the rink, I know the city does quite a bit, but when I was president of Beloit Youth Hockey, I know we paid for the brand new scoreboard. I believe the new sound system was paid for by Beloit Youth Hockey. I believe the mezzanine was put up by Beloit Youth Hockey. The lobby was put up by Beloit Youth Hockey, and the facility itself was built by Beloit Hockey. The other thing I'd like to bring up is hockey brings to the city of Beloit about $1 million in revenue. And if I came to the council and said, I have something that can bring $1 million of economic impact to the city, you'd probably all take notice. That's what hockey brings to the city of Beloit. So before we get too far, let's look at, let's leave no stone unturned, not only with the ice rink, but also with the pool and also with the golf course. Before we get too far and looking at any of the budget cuts. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right then. Is there anyone else wishing to speak under citizens' participation? Hearing none, I'll close citizens' participation and we'll move on to the consent agenda. All items listed in the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered at this point on the agenda. Councilor DeForest, you wish to something be removed from consent agenda?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to remove item D, please.
Item D. All right. Any other councilors wish something removed from the consent agenda? The consent agenda, therefore, will consist of items 6A through 6C and 6E and F. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by DeForest, second by Lupke. All in favor of approving the amended consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes by a vote of 7-0. Item 6D.
Item 6D is the resolution awarding the Public Works contract C-1509, Big Hill Park Path. This project will build an off-road path from the lower playground in Big Hill to Big Hill Court. The lowest of the 4 bids received for the project was $331,730.50 from the Madrell Excavating Company. And this bid is 9.4% more than the engineer's estimate of $303,104. Madrell Excavating is considered a responsible bidder for this project. The provision of $49,269.50 for change orders or extra work result in a total project cost of $381,000. A DNR grant was received for this project and is included in the city's funds in the amount of approximately $130,000. Funding is available in the 2014 and 2015 capital improvement plan, and approval of the resolution for awarding the contract to Madrell Excavating in the amount of $331,730.50 is recommended.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve item 6D?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Lupke, second by Sloniker. Do we have any councilor questions or comments?
Yes.
Councilor DeForest.
City Manager Curtis Luther, would you please explain to the public where we will be obtaining this funding from? I know that given concerns that the public might feel about our discussion in the budget about our park facilities, recreational facilities, could you give the public a chance to kind of understand how this funding that we're using is a little different? Thank you.
Yes. The funds for this particular project are in the capital improvement program for the city of Beloit. As was previously mentioned, $130,000 is being allocated from a previously solicited DNR grant. And if the city were to not move forward, we would lose those grant funds, and likely any future application for grant funds from the DNR would not be seen favorably. That said, the conversation about our operating facilities are included in the operating budget. And I think it's incredibly important that the public understand that there is no service level reduction for 2016 in the current proposed budget. So while there has been a great deal of conversation reported about several of our facilities, those were, I think, largely a result of prior year debates and conversation, and I wholeheartedly agree that the community needs to have further discussion about those facilities and options and partnerships that may be available to help them continue to be financially viable in the future. So while there may be some misunderstanding, those facilities are not budgeted to have any service reductions in 2016, and the portion of the budget that is approving this particular project is on the capital side, completely separate from operations, and has approximately a third of the funding being provided through grant dollars.
Would it be okay if I just added, just to be crystal clear, the funding for this project, the capital improvement project funding, cannot be used to fund operations. So it's not like we can take this money and use it to spend money on operations for the pool or the hockey rink. So I just want to make sure that the public is aware that, given how tight things are, that we're not foolishly spending money that is taken away from operations in any department. But this is capital improvement money, and the DNR grant piece is a huge, significant piece of this funding. And I would also like to say this path is, we've been working on this for many years, and there's some in the audience who know that and are who are aware of how many years we've been working to try to connect the Janesville and Beloit bike paths. And this is a significant chunk of that path. And so I'm pleased that we have received this DNR grant and we're able to make this a reality. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
All right, any other councilor questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the matter.
Dave does.
Oh, do you wish to say something? Go ahead, Councilor Lipke.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly say this is a very positive thing for Beloit. It will enhance and beautify the connection to Janesville. And we've had not hundreds, but thousands of hours of volunteer help go into building this, and they will continue to maintain this. We've had people cutting and building bridges and just making this a reality. This should have been in 30, 40 years ago, but finally it's there, and it will be something that can be used by children, adults, and young, old alike. So it's something that I think will, again, enhance Beloit. So thank you for all that you've put in. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments from councilors? Hearing none, I'll call the matter. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes 7-0. Item 7 would be ordinances. There are none. 8, appointments. There are none. So we'll move on to councilor activities and upcoming events, which is item 9. We'll start with Councilor Hendricks.
I actually have nothing to report, believe it or not, this week. So, look at Dave. I'll have some next time, I promise.
Thank you. Councilor Sloniker.
I was able to attend the Plan Commission in regards to the Keeler building, or the Colac Center. That was very informational. And then I attended the Fruzen dedication. That was a very nice event, very beautiful school for the community and the kids that get to attend there.
Great, thank you. Councilor Kelly.
I have nothing to report either. I was out of town last week.
All right. Councilor Lupke.
I too was at the Fruzen dedication, and again, something that again enhances Beloit and makes Beloit very proud. As I said at the at the time, the schools are the community and the community is the schools, and we can be very proud of that school. And it's very special when the individual you name it for is alive. That's very unusual. Secondly, Friday night I was at Beloit College for a community event. We had two speakers, Dr. Levy from the college, and then author Jim Weiss. Talked about privilege, white privilege, and it was a full house at the college chapel. Very interesting, informative. That's all I have.
Councilor DeForest.
Thank you. It was a busy week. I too was pleased to attend the Tim Weiss lecture and have my daughter come back from college to go to that with me. We've always been a fan of the work that he's done around white privilege, and so we're pleased to be there. And also to hear from our very own Lisa Anderson-Levy. She had some incredible insights for all of us, and we're so grateful and fortunate to have her in our community. I attended the Plan Commission meeting that was referenced, and also the Fruzen dedication, and thrilled to have the school named after a wonderful Beloit resident who's done so many great things for our community, and also would like to acknowledge Miss Barbara Hickman, for who the auditorium is named after, and all of the service that she has also given to Beloit schools and to the children in our community over many, many years of service. I was able to attend the First Generation movie and a discussion with students who will be first generation college students, and had some good discussion, dialogue about the obstacles that they face, and am excited to be working with a small group of individuals trying to develop some free ACT prep that I will be providing the English part of it for Beloit Memorial High School students, and then also working with students on college application essays. So I'm really excited about how that movie and the discussion with students helped prompt some real, and this is so Beloit, some real action to actually do something about addressing those obstacles and barriers. So thrilled about that. And then finally, I'd like to thank the City of Beloit staff who donated their time and their money for the car wash that they held to raise money for United Way. It's fantastic to see our employees set good example to the community about how important it is to support the organizations that the United Way supports. And I just would like to thank the staff that helped make that possible. So thank you to the City of Beloit employees. Thank you, that's all.
Councilor Kincaid.
This past Saturday, I attended an event at the golf course. An avid player there, Kevin Mittner, had died several years ago. And on Saturday, a recognition and remembrance of him was held as the practice cages for hitting balls was initiated. Kevin's parents, his wife Becky, and many staff of the golf course attended, and I was honored to be there with them and recognizing Kevin. I might add that I did play Kevin once in golf, and it was very difficult for me. He was a very good player. I did play a few times since, but I remember him well.
All right, thank you. And I won't chime in or add anything to this evening. So item 10A.
Is a presentation of the proposed 2016 operating library and capital improvement projects.
Good evening. The budget process began nearly 6 months ago when we held our annual CIP kickoff meeting in mid-April. Since then, we've had several meetings with City Manager Luther, as well as all of the department head and division head staff, and have gone through very meticulous detail of every single line item of every single budget since then. And we've done so in order to present you with a balanced budget tonight. So with that said, I'm pleased to present to you the proposed operating and capital budgets for 2016. First, we'll just hit the budget summary. You can see that we have a total budget of all funds of $97.5 million, which is a $6.6 million increase or 7.22%. The majority, if not all of this, is related to the increase in the capital improvement budget. The general fund budget is $30.5 million, which is actually a decrease of $460,000 or 1.5% compared to last year. The enterprise funds, similar trend, about $180,000 reduction for a total of $18.2 million. This chart summarizes the total budget. As you can see, where I had indicated that the majority of the increase was related to the capital improvement plan. That is nearly 100% increase over last year, or about $7.9 million. We're going to touch on that a little bit later, not to get into the detail in this summary slide. As you can see, the total operating budgets are consistent of the general fund, debt service, special revenue funds, and enterprise funds, and those are also showing a reduction of almost $1 million or 1.3%. Internal service funds also showed a reduction of about 3.5%. These next few slides will just go through some of the highlights and challenges that we encountered as we were trying to put together the 2016 budget. These first couple of bullet points are related to each other in the fact that they both have safer grant elements to the fire department. The first one is actually related to the expiration of the first safer grant that we acquired a couple of years ago. We received a one-year extension to the grant for one individual who is a veteran. That grant expires midway through 2016, so we had to increase the general fund by a full-time position for half of the year, pretty much in order to stay in compliance with the new grant that we applied for to extend the existing 3 firefighters that are currently being funded through the old SAFER grant. So it's kind of confusing. It's 2 grants, but the second grant goes from January 1 of 16 through December 31 of 17 for those 3 full-time employees that are currently being funded through that grant. The assistant to the city manager position, as well as a human resource analyst position, will remain vacant for the 2016 fiscal year in order to balance the budget. We also know of some known retirements that are going to be coming up, so we did make some minor adjustments to the various individual budgets to accommodate some of that. Typically we don't do that, but this was an exceptional year that we had to go ahead and make some of those changes in this process. The state budget was passed this last summer, which is a 2-year budget. There was both good and bad news for the municipalities around the state. Number one being that the good news is that shared revenue and expenditure strength was not cut. The bad news is it wasn't increased either. So at this point where the state budget was when it got balanced, most municipalities were happy that we just didn't get a cut. So we took that as good news. The bad news on this one, we are losing a projected $160,000 of state highway aid, and that's mostly due to the fact that our spending on streets has diminished over the last rolling 6 years. That this is based on a formula that the more you spend, the more money you get reimbursed. So we try to be fiscally responsible, and it ends up hurting some of the state aid. So that's why we're seeing the reduction of $160,000. Net new construction was actually a positive for us. This is one of the highest in the Rock County. Rock County averaged about 92.92%. We were at 1.13%. So that's pretty exciting for us. That also helps our expenditure restraint number going forward. Property tax, really this was a direct correlation with the net new construction, which allowed us to increase our property tax levy, which we show there as being about $138,000. We didn't use any fund balance to balance the 2016 budget, which is a reduction of $300,000 in revenue. City Manager Luther has indicated, we have lost about 460,000 of real dollars, or 1.5%. This is 300 of those. The Department of Revenue and the city settled the 2013 and 2014 equalized assessed value appeal. This was a long time coming. We sat down and were able to negotiate an 8% increase over the commercial properties of 2014. And that resulted in an increase in equalized values of about 57 million. The way these work is that next year we'll actually see a reduction of about half of that, because this 57 million was kind of a makeup for missing out on the 2014 element. So we'll see those EAVs come down a little bit, but either way it gets us back in line where we need to be from an equalized value standpoint. This has a direct impact on the debt capacity that we have able to borrow, and it also has a direct impact on our tax increment districts. Some of the fees that we're proposing to increase, one of them is the rental permit fee of an increase of $5, going to $40 from $35. The stormwater utility is proposing a 50-cent increase per SFU, and that's mostly due to the fact that we are getting closer to not meeting the debt coverage ratios for our revenue bond issue. Wastewater and water utilities are also proposing to have a modest increase of 3%. This is more of what you would call a standard of living type of increase, cost of living increase. There has not been a sewer rate increase, I don't believe, since at least 2003, if I recall, and I think the last water utility increase has been somewhere around 2010. So it's been quite a while since we've done even a cost of living increase. And I believe the utility is actually currently in a rate study right now to look at the total cost to run the facility, and that's what goes into effect when you kind of look at what the rate should be for your utilities. Other than that, there's really no other significant increases proposed at this time. One of the big changes to the budget, not really from a cost standpoint, but from a procedural standpoint, is the proposed solid waste program. This is where we're looking to go to an automated solid waste and recycling program from a manual solid waste collection program. This is due to be implemented in June of 2016. Some of the program highlights are listed there. I'm certainly no expert in this program, but I know enough just to be dangerous, I think. You're going to receive 2 96-gallon carts, one for recycling and one for trash. One of the big changes is that the recycling will be picked up every other week instead of every week. Bulky items and appliances will still be picked up, but they'll be done on a prepaid and a pre-scheduled basis, which also will be for the dumpster program. The reason for the dumpster program, too, is partially to get rid of the high-volume pickups. That program is going to go away, so you can rent a dumpster instead of just putting it all out at the curb. We'll be eliminating the Sharps program. A lot of that was implemented because of the manual process, so we didn't want to put the employees' safety in harm, so that Sharps program was created. Being that it's automated, that's no longer necessary. And then TVs will be assessed a $5 per item charge. Now we get into all the numbers. This is just the general fund budget by revenue. The big change here, we talked about the 1.5% decrease in revenues. The majority of that is the fund balance of $300,000 that we touched on earlier. The other major piece is the $160,000 reduction in the highway transportation aids. So those are the major program changes. Everything else is kind of, some go up, some go down to kind of offset each other. But those are the main ones. This is a graphical representation of the revenues. The big one, of course, is the intergovernmental aids and state revenues. That, of course, is the shared revenue program, which funds about 62% of our general fund budget. On the expenditure side, these are the expenditures by department. It has to coincide with the reduction in revenue. So as you can see, there's a lot of decreases in the expenditures for all the different departments. The big one there being, you can see the police department reduction of $250,000. A lot of that is due to the health fund savings that we incurred through plan design change, as well as the WRS contributions from the state. Those are given to us by the state, but it's an expense for the city. That was a decrease of 1%, so it saved the city some money there. There was also some minor changes just throughout different structural maintenance account line items throughout the police department budget. Some of the other decreases, in fact, a lot of the other decreases that you're going to see there, a lot had to do with the health insurance changes that we made, and we'll get into that into the internal service funds a little bit later. This is the general fund budget expenditures in a graph. As usual, the fire and police departments do make up about 2/3 of the general fund budget, which is 62%. The public works department is, as you would expect, is the other big one, which is about 1/5 of the budget, or 20%. Total special revenue funds decreased by 1.82%. Special revenue funds are your tax increment districts. They're the library. They are solid waste and grant funds. The majority of the decrease is other funding source, which is fund balance. We just applied less fund balance than we have in the past years on these funds, with a decrease of $516,000. Although we've only decreased the total funds by $274,000, which means there is an increase in some other places, which is the taxes revenue. That is primarily tax increment in all of our TIDs. The other one is of note is the departmental earnings and that's primarily the solid waste fund. Here's all the different funds and the expenditures. Again, as I mentioned, these are a lot of the TIDs and grants. Not a whole lot has changed in the tax increment districts. Mostly it's just debt service and some developer incentives. Couple of notes though, that the TID 5 is projected to close in 2017. TID 6 is projected to close in 2018. And TID 8, the expenditure period there is expected to close in 2017. Not a lot there in those. Again, these are the rest of the TIDs. The big change there is the TID 13 Milwaukee Road. That was just a change in a capital project from one year to the next. Everything else is pretty much status quo. There again is the solid waste collection. You can see there the reduction of about 1.5%. With that change in the program, it actually is safer to the employees, and it's also actually a cost savings measure. So it's kind of a double benefit there. The enterprise funds, this would be your golf course, cemetery, transit, any of your other funds like of that nature. Not a lot changed here. It shows the 0.96% reduction in revenue, or $176,000. The big one here is the departmental earnings, which is actually an increase in revenue. And that's an increase of 1.42%, and those are due strictly to the increases of the fees that I talked about earlier in the presentation. The big reduction of revenue is, of course, just less applied fund balance. Again, it's kind of a recurring theme. We've kind of gotten away from applying fund balance as a general rule to be more of a sustainable budgeting process. These are the individual expenses by fund. The golf course, you can see, actually had a reduction in budgeted expenditures of about 7%, or $36,000. That was pretty much some personnel modifications, some different allocations of resources. The water pollution control, which is the sewer utility, decreased by $67,000. A lot of the decreases, again, and even some of the enterprise funds are going to be due to the change in the healthcare plan design. One of the big changes here is in the ambulance fund. You can see the reduction in expenditures of about $102,000, which was made up, about half of that was made up of if you recall, a cot system that we bought a couple of years ago. We paid for that in 2014 and 2015. That paid off this year in 15, so there's no expenditure in 16 appropriated for that. So that was a big change. And then I think we have also not funded the ambulance reserve in the ambulance fund, as the majority of those purchases are being made through the capital program anyway. Speaking of the capital improvement plan, this is the big mover of the year. We did add about $7.9 million in capital projects. And what you're going to see here is to point out that these are not funded necessarily by the city. They run through the city's capital program, so a lot of it is grant funds, private funds, operating funds, fund balance, those types of expenditures. So the number's big, but in reality, the city's portion only increased really by about $2 million, which is our general obligation bonds and notes. So so for instance, the intergovernmental aids, that went up almost $2.2 million. A lot of that is grant funds. One of those is a T grant, one's a DNR grant. But we have to run it all through the capital program, even though it's not a true expense of the city. The departmental earnings is the bond issue. That's what I was talking about earlier. We've been averaging somewhere around $3 million a year in our notes and bonds. Due to the increased equalized values, we were able to borrow more money to kind of get our program back where it truly belongs. We had been making the administrative decisions to not borrow as much due to capacity reasons. So now we have more capacity and we have more projects that need to get done. So that is about $5.1 million. The other financing sources is equipment replacement fund, which is primarily funding the solid waste automation program of around $2.5 or $2.6 million. That was a decision that we made in order to get the program to move. We didn't have the capacity in our bond issue at the time, so we decided to use our own funds in the vehicle replacement fund, which is a win-win for the city because the program gets done. We also are paying interest through the solid waste fund. We're basically paying interest to ourselves. So if we're going to do it, that's the way to do it. And then finally, in the other sources is some private financing. So again, not an expense of the city. Here's the expenses to the capital improvement budget, which is, a lot of it is from the capital improvement plan itself, the increase of $8 million. The equipment replacement fund is the standard vehicle equipment that we do on an annual basis. That actually decreased by about $120,000. Those are your two big items in the CIP. Internal service funds. These are funds that fund themselves through the other funds within the budgets. This would be your insurance funds, your health insurance fund, your fleet maintenance accounts. Not a lot has changed here. The biggest one being the health insurance fund. That's why we saw a lot of the decreases in some of the operating budgets. The less money that those funds have as expenditures means less money that the internal service funds have as revenue. So that's why you see the revenue decrease by about $430,000. The increase in the municipal mutual insurance is the increase in the property insurance rate that we talked about earlier this year. The city going to the municipal property insurance company was an increase of about 20% to the property insurance. And the other big mover there was the work comp. Otherwise, the fleet maintenance, the thing to recognize there is the fuel savings. Nice not to pay $4 a gallon. Debt service fund, not a lot has changed in the debt service fund. The total fund only changed by 0.2%, or about $12,000. This is pretty straightforward, just paying the debt. Municipal tax levy, again, pretty straightforward. The general fund levy increased due to the net new construction number I talked about earlier. Since we had some savings in the debt service levy, we're able to capture that in the general fund. The thing to note here is the assessed values, which is a decrease of about $741,000. That's assessed value. That assessed value is what our tax rate is based on, and that's why you're seeing the tax rate increase. It's twofold. Number one, we're levying more dollars due to net new construction. Two, the assessed values are going down, which accelerates that rate. If we could get some relief in the assessed value, it would actually drive that rate down the other way. And here's the graphical representation of that. The next two slides really illustrate that. You can see the trend line going from left to right on the tax rate. And here you can see in the yellow the trend line going the other way from left to right as the trend down. So as the assessed values continue to decline, the tax rate will continue to increase, assuming that we have net new construction. The next steps, we are proposing a council workshop next Monday at the library at 8 o'clock. That's been the standard day that we've had for several years now. If everything goes well there, public hearing is scheduled to be on the agenda 2 weeks from today. We'll have more workshops if necessary, if we need those, if you guys would like to have those. And then finally, we'll hope to get it on the November 2nd agenda for your consideration for approval. And that'll be right back here in 4 weeks from today. So that is the 2016 budget in a nutshell. I know that's pretty fast, but we have questions or comments at this point.
Keeping in mind that we are going to have a lot of time to talk about this, do we have any comments on this tonight? Councilor DeForest?
Yes, I do. I know we'll have the day-long session on Monday, but a couple of things I just would like to give the heads up that I would like more detailed information on. For example, you mentioned the municipality's mutual insurance increase, and you said part of that was increase in workman's comp. I'd like to know which departments we're seeing that workman's comp increase. I want to talk more about debt service on Monday, especially because we're increasing our CIP so dramatically. I mean, I've been really conscious of trying to cut our debt service, and we're keeping it the same. And I'm just concerned because I'd like to see us actually look at reducing it versus increasing it or keeping it the same. So I'd like more information about what the current CIP proposals will do to future debt service. And I thought there was one more. Oh, the golf course. It looks like we don't have 2015 actual, of course, yet, but I'm concerned because the 2014 actual is a lot more than what we proposed. So I'm just worried that, again, we are shooting ourselves in the foot by proposing that we think we'll spend less money subsidizing the golf course than we actually do. I want some more hard information about how we arrived at this proposed number. I want a more realistic idea of what we're actually talking about so we make a good decision about this. So I would like a lot more detail about that, please. I don't want to just throw that at you on Monday. I want to give you time to see if you can pull that together.
That's fine. And when this was prepared, this was done July 1, roughly. So you really didn't even have a full or even partial year, really,
Okay.
of the
Great.
actuals, so we can definitely get together a closer projection.
Great. And then my last concern, this is the big one, and I know we'll talk about it a lot on Monday. I'm concerned about the reduction in the police department's budget, and especially because I suspect that we will have to have some hard discussion about the need for increase in staff. And I would like to have the opportunity to make sure we set aside some time on Monday to talk about what are some possibilities for how we could fund some additional staff in the police department, and what kind of recommendations that might look like. I'd like for us to really talk about it this year. I don't want to wait another year. So just letting you know. Thank you.
We do have some opportunities for if the COPS grant is funded again. It's really unfortunate that the city did not go after the last round of COPS grant dollars, and many communities with lesser need in the state of Wisconsin were funded. And so I think that was a really significant missed opportunity.
Okay.
And so we are hoping that does get funded again. That would be an excellent opportunity to move forward. And we do have some other thoughts about potential reallocation. But again, with the revenue actually declining, we are severely limited because we have to cut somewhere else in order to increase funding in that particular department.
I'm sorry, can I ask one more question? I thought it sounded like, so the SAFER grant for those 3 positions, do we receive that for the next year, or is that still pending?
We were awarded that.
I thought
grant,
so.
yes.
Okay, just something you said made me nervous. It sounded like, okay. Phew. Thank goodness, Chief Liggett. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, item 10B.
Is to schedule the council budget workshop for 8 a.m. on Monday, October 12th in the community room at the Beloit Public Library.
Do we need to take a vote on this, or is this just by,
As long as you promise it doesn't go till 2:30 in the morning.
all right.
Our last meeting, like our last meeting.
So do we need to vote on this, or? Okay, because I didn't see a resolution, so. Okay, all right then, well, I'll assume that that's just general, that by general acclamation, we're planning we've scheduled the meeting for 8 a.m. Monday, October 12th, 2015, in the community room of the Beloit Public Library. All right, we will all be there with bells on and hopefully awake. All right then, item 11 would be reports from boards and city officers. We have none, so item 12 is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Second. Moved by Sloniker, second by Hendricks. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.